DJ, we're up for a discussion about the iris today and your new insights.
Well, I just like to share with you that what I've been working on in the last 5 months is producing new material that's really useful. The materials are something I can really feel good about. And part of this is I would like to be sure, as much as humanly possible, that anything that's being produced is in harmony with love, and that means it needs to be true. And the only way I can do that is to apply it on myself and have an emotional experience of it, so I can at least relate it as honestly as I can. And in doing that, I've had a series of experiences that's changing my own perceptions of the iris as a mirror of the individual, and then the individual's progression through life, and how that progression continues in a specific way in the spirit world. I would like to be as careful as possible that everything that I'm presenting now will continue to be utilized in the spirit world.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be sure that whatever I can, it's actually in harmony with the same way that it would be beneficial to somebody when they leave here.
Great.
In doing that, I'm asking, I'm literally praying to know the truth about certain things, and one of them is the iris. And I'm not saying that the information I'm giving is the end-all, be-all, because we all know that the experience of the iris keeps moving and evolving. Now, what I'm seeing is that the iris has a specific function. And what that function is, in many ways, is a reflection of what was acquired at conception, added to from conception to birth, and added to from birth to 7. And so it's a sequence of layers. One layer, literally as the iris forms, the bottom layer, like 4 levels or 4 pancakes, the bottom layer is the kinesthetic, which is related to the constitution and the fascia and the vascular system of the iris. It's a vascular system circulating blood literally in the iris, but it's also a reflection of other energies circulating from the pupil and beyond, like we have described in the shape of the universe or the torus, that flow of energy that moves. And the layers go down kinesthetic, primarily formed between conception and birth. Somewhere between the beginning of the 2nd or 3rd month, the flower level now emerges and is usually complete by the time of birth. Somewhere between birth and 7, also in layers, the jewel level forms. So it's kinesthetic, stream, flower, emotional, jewel. So the jewel doesn't really begin to form until after 2. So the patterns of jewel now interfaces into the beginning of the shaker pattern.
Yeah.
So it's stream, flower, jewel, shaker. The last 2, jewel and shaker, are primarily contributions of the masculine. So the jewel and the shaker, they are primarily more formulated when we open our eyes, we begin to speak, and there comes that time of movement or voluntary urination, feeding, mobility. So the mobility between 2 and 7, the shaker pattern is there if it's there at all. And so these 4 layers, they now become the expression of the personality. Now, what I've gotten out of this is something that's a little bit disturbing to me, is I realize that at least 99% of the time, we are using this constitutional structure, like, for example, if somebody is a jewel, they're using their jewel-oriented mind, and that is to understand or explain all the things that jewels are familiar with. They're using that to avoid a massive reservoir of fear and pain, suffering.
Fear of criticism?
All of the structures of the iris, all of the constitutional types, are actually a splash pattern, if you will, of how we choose to deal with unresolved pain and suffering and fear. So people who are streams, they have a way of desiring personal safety. They want personal security in some form. They like that touch, they like that safety, they like the cuddle. Whereas the flower structure right above it, they like being seen. They like being emotionally involved in other people. Whereas the jewel, another sequence, is involved in the watching and the telling and the analysis, whereas the shaker is involved in the dramatic movement. So in my case, for example, I'm a shaker jewel. So my 2 mechanisms that I use to avoid fear inside myself and to avoid pain and suffering is I go into dynamic motion, which is called avoidance or activity, or I go into mentalness or jewel. So shaker jewel goes into dynamic mental avoidance. Now, these attributes become socially acceptable form of attributes. Flower has theirs, stream has theirs, stream jewel, stream flower, and so on. Unfortunately, every time I'm engaging in this mechanism, I'm actually in avoidance of fear. When I'm avoiding the fear, I'm damaging myself and I'm damaging others. So every time I'm engaged in avoiding my truth of the fear and the pain inside of me, and I transmit it to other people through my personality, I'm actually damaging myself and them. Because I'm constantly in avoidance of my own pain. But everyone does that to each other. In extreme cases, not extreme cases, in normal cases, that produces addiction. Addiction comes in hundreds of different varieties. The easiest ones are substance addictions, everything from drugs to alcohol to caffeine, and many others. But the ones below that, on the flower level, they have to do with emotional addiction. And there's broad parameters of emotional addiction. But all of the addictive processes are designed to avoid the fear, pain, and suffering inside of me. And it comes from 2 sources. It comes from one source, which was given to me at conception and added to through the processes of gestation up to 7. But the largest percentage is what I did after 7, which is what did I do with the damage and how did I transmit it? So how did I use my personality to transmit my fear, my denial, my facade, my way of manipulating or communicating, socially acceptable or not, is I'm actually bathing other people, creating a law of attraction in the process of doing this, But the reality is I'm doing it to you, you're doing it to me, and that's now engaged in creating pain and suffering for each other. It's aging us. My denial of my own suffering is aging me. My ongoing use of my personality to transmit it is aging me and hurting you. Everybody's doing it to each other. Now,
so how long do we need to spend in the fears and the suffering?
Fortunately or unfortunately, I think it goes on for a long time. I think that we produce something. Now, one of the things I got in touch with is that the magnitude of the damage that I transmitted from about age 4, which is about where the free will begins. Between 4 and 7, the free will is more actualized. The amount of damage I've transmitted by the age of 7, all the way up to my tender age now, is massive. Utterly, totally beyond my comprehension. Every time I've done something out of harmony with love, and I've transmitted it by my fear, I've actually produced damage to myself and others. And part of that is I spent the last 2 months focused on this, and the amount of the damage is staggering. Because it takes on the smallest form for the damage I've caused to myself. It takes on a larger form when it starts to include other people, relationships. It takes on a larger form when it goes into community. It takes on a larger form when it goes into my nation. Like, for example, I didn't fully grasp, and I still don't, I'm responsible for every death that the American military has ever rained upon the earth. Because that's my social network, and they use money that I pay them, taxes, to rain death on other people. I am responsible for all of the pain, myself, my community, my nation, that I've transmitted toward anyone or been involved in, which I am emotionally responsible for the destruction of all the species on Earth. Every animal, bird, fish, tree, everything that has been destroyed by greed, by power. I use my cell phone, rare earth minerals, slaves in China. I use my car, oil, tires, this, consuming resources. I'm putting on weight while other people are starving. I'm responsible in broader networks, 5, and other networks, 6, I'm responsible for all of the suffering I've ever been involved in, whether I knew it or not. So I started getting in touch with that, and it's not a pretty picture. I'm only minutely touching upon it, and it's more than I can bear. It's not just me and my slingshot when I was a small boy, you know, throwing rocks at birds. It's not just me and my friends that I used to rough and tumble with. It's not for that pack of gum I stole when I was 7 out of the drugstore. You know, it's not for it's all those things, but it goes on and on and on and on. All the damage I did in my 20s, and by the way, I did plenty, none of that damage is in the iris. None of the damage past the age of 7 is in the iris. Guess where it is? It's stored in the spirit body, and it's available in the antimatter world when we leave. I mean, we literally leave and we go into a corridor of all of our awaiting pain that we've ever transmitted to anyone is waiting for us. So the next antimatter world that I go into, called the next spiritual level, I'm actually in the process of creating now by what I'm transmitting all the time. That's what's troubling me the most.
Through your encounters with mediumship, you've been able to get people to shift from very dark, difficult places in the spirit world.
Yes, I've been involved in extensive mediumship of examining what the spirit world looks like, where my family is, where tens of other families are, and the sequences of what they go through in the spirit world. And it turns around that my responsibility is, if I can engage my responsibility now, it will carry over into the spirit world and help me when I land. But if I don't do anything now to accept the responsibility for the damage I'm creating, I enter into a world where there's very little help, because I haven't had any desire to actually change. Does that make sense, Prakash? Is he there?
I think you've driven him into a lot of fear.
Probably so. So this is the harder part for me.
Yeah, well, it's massive. Yeah.
Minutely becoming aware of the magnitude of the damage I've created myself, my family, my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, my neighborhood, my society, the world, the spirit world I've actually engaged in. Because of my behavior, spirits have been able to do unloving things through me. And the amount of damage is staggering. And the reason that I'm willing to do that is because I want to know the truth about the damage I've created. Because if I can actually begin to feel it, I can begin to forgive, release, have remorse. I can begin the process of
choosing more love and truth.
Choosing more love and truth. And then when I land in the next world, that's the active principle that's in order. That's what's engaged. And that continues. So what I do now with my personal life, my choice, my desire, my own humility, my creativity, my ethics, my morality, my love of truth, what I do now sets in motion something that will last a very long time. If I'm in complete denial of it, and I enter the spirit world, I don't get any help. If I'm asking for help now, and I'm earnestly wanting to find the truth, that accelerates in the spirit world, and my ability to move through the sequences, because apparently we travel through the same sequences, which means all of the damage I have at a very core level as a child under the age of 2 actually comes first. It's not the things I did to people when I was 45, 50, and 60. It's the damage I received at a core level under the age of 2 comes up first. And most people are not aware of the amount of damage that has been created under the age of 2. But that becomes the compelling experience. So am I actually sincerely willing to become aware of all the damage or pain or suffering or fear inside me prior to the age of 2? When the natural mechanism is designed in the iris of the eye to avoid it. The natural mechanism says, don't go there, project your personality, do these addictive habits, have these relationships. It says, avoid it. The only way I can come back to it is have a repetitive and strong enough desire to want to feel the truth of the damage under the age of 2 that's actually contributing to all of the damage I've transmitted worldwide. I mean, it sounds like a philosophical thing to say that I'm responsible for the starvation of millions of children on Earth. I can say, no, that's my government, that's other people, that's those people in Africa, that's those other, no, that's not me. But I actually, through the network, I'm engaged in everything my government does, everything my community does, everything that's happening globally, I'm involved in it. So I can't claim, naivety, I can't claim ignorance, and even if I do, it's still true. Am I actually willing to accept my 5? Am I actually willing to admit or begin to experiment with, I'm global? Am I responsible in some way for the penguins? Am I responsible in some way for climate change? Am I responsible in some way for starvation and people who freeze to death and people who don't have anything while I'm living in a relative luxury? I have all the food I want to eat, probably too much. I have all the heat I need, and I have 2 cars. I'm relatively rich while much of the world is suffering, and I'm kind of going, well, gee, that's too bad. So that's where I am. And I've just emotionally been getting in touch with it, and the magnitude of it is just shocking. So it's frozen me. I've not been able to produce anything because I've been in fear about what I might produce that would be damaging. Right? Because I've produced things in the past that were true.
So, it's quite humbling to feel those things.
Shocking.
And then, humility is a good place to start.
But not sharing. We're holding back and not sharing inside could be harmful as well.
Humbling. I'm sharing with you my personal process right now, as transparently as I can. And I didn't actually get here until I actually started asking for and praying about the truth of the iris. And then I got to how the iris, in its different layers, was a constitutional reflection of the avoidance of fear. As I kept working with that, the diameter of that fear kept growing until it included all of my life, all of my social relationships, all of the sequences and the cycles of life, until it includes literally the spirit world. Now, the other thing I'm intrigued with is the matter-antimatter experience that science is beginning to confirm, that we have an antimatter field around the body. Call it dark matter. Call it whatever you want to call it. We have a spirit body. Right? Now what's occurring is everything I'm doing is being sent into the black hole of my future. I'm literally crafting what I'm becoming. I'm engaged in it. And I didn't realize how significant that is. So that's why I would like to be able to engage the responsible use of it now for the intention of becoming more loving and having a more loving relationship with my Creator, using my imagination, using my passion, my own ability to express, using the 3-girl, 3-boy, truth and ethics and harmony, using the 4, which is giving and receiving love, using the 5, which is a global compassion, using the 6. The interesting thing that they've just reported was, mathematically, they believe that the antimatter world, our dark matter, is at least 10 times greater than matter. So the mass of dark matter vastly exceeds the mass of matter, which makes sense to me because the spirit world has these levels and has massive universes, much different than how the material world is in our limited perception. So can I have an effect upon my future and your future and anyone else's future? Yes. If I start now, it's going to be significantly easier. But what is it like to find out that 99.99% of the time, we're actually continuously transmitting our denial of fear, pain, and suffering? And I think that's actually the aging process of how we're aging as a result of it. The accumulation of denial is slowly suffocating me until, according to natural science, I die of natural causes, which is me suffocating me. You know? And then all of us together suffocating each other globally. Literally. Right? So that's where I am. That's the part that's been staggering to me, is even to get a glimpse of how big that is and how much I'm in denial.
Are you saying, DJ, that one of the ways forward is to consciously feel your pain and suffering?
To consciously accept the responsibility for every feeling that I've ever generated within myself or transmitted that has ever been unloving. Because every single thought, feeling, or action has been remembered.
And so for practitioners dealing with people coming in with, you know, I've got a cancer here, I've got high blood pressure, I've got this illness, each gland and organ is a reflection of the fears or
Always.
anger or...
Always. So one of the primary things that a practitioner does, in my opinion, is education. It's 5 minutes, at the most 10 minutes of assessment or diagnosis. Then the rest of the time it's usually education. Educating them about what to not eat, things to eat. But on a body chemical level, you can impose, simply by telling me what biochemical things to ingest in herbal medicine or nutrition, that my body will automatically respond to based on the natural law of polarities. Biochemically and nutritional, you can tell me, don't eat that, eat that. All I have to do is engage my will to actually eat the thing that you told me to eat, and it's going to change me according to the biochemical laws. Now above that, that's kinesthetic by the way, above that is the emotional level, which is the vibrational level. So now, how do I become more responsible as a practitioner for helping people learn how to be responsible, not only for their biochemical life, but also their emotional life or their vibrational life? It's hard to say to people, hey, you've got this bone cancer because it's a combination of what your great-grandfather gave you and your parents transmitted and the behavior that you conducted. they want to hear it's something I ate. They want to blame it on some toxin in the environment.
Monsanto.
They want to blame it on the GMOs, right? They want to blame it on processed foods. They want to blame it on radiation. Not accept the responsibility. Accepting the responsibility is level 1. So for me, the basic practitioner has to teach level 1. You're in this condition because of what you do. Sounds like Prakash is busy writing something. Yes. He's describing how the presence of the arrival of the jewel automatically engages the conductivity or the mobility. Right? So the arrival of the jewel is engaged in the last level, which is the shaker. Yes. And it comes in sequences. Now, the knowledge of this, to many people, is obscure, right? The three of us could talk about the interface of these things and how they work, but until I'm actually willing to accept the responsibility that I'm the only one who can change my awareness. I'm the only one who can change my degree of love. I'm the only one. I can only one who can face my denial, my fear. I'm the only one who can ever deal with what's inside me. If I make anybody else responsible for it, I've made an error. If I blame somebody else, including my parents, it's not likely to work. I can't even blame God. God made this horrible system. Look how it works. Works terribly. Look at the world. Isn't God terrible? If I blame anybody else without accepting the responsibility, I'm causing climate change. I'm causing disease and suffering all over the planet. I'm causing people to die in napalm or some other bomb or whatever else. I can't go, it's not me. The honest truth is my fear is contributing to the collective fear that's causing people to act out in controlling, addictive, sabotaging, killing ways. That's my basic message with this recording. And this is just a report about where I am. I'm kind of wandering around stunned. Even though I've known this intellectually, I'm just beginning to have the emotional inkling about its impact.
And DJ, are you saying that that pain that we've created awaits us when we go to the spirit world?
Yes.
Can we begin to feel it now and shift it now?
Yes, 100% of the pain I've transmitted has been accumulated and is waiting for me in the spirit world. It's remembered. And it's laid out in ways I don't comprehend. Until I accept the responsibility to feel it. And the intriguing way is it has a specific sequence to it. I don't start with my relationships that I've had later in life. I don't even start with my children. I don't start with my friends. I actually start with what it felt like to be a baby with my parents. I start all over again. And so I'm doing my best to access, by desiring to access it, what is the truth about the damage I have received under the age of 2. And why that's important is if I am sincerely willing and desiring over a period of time to feel the damage that was transmitted to me, and regardless about how it got there, whether it was my parents or my grandparents or somebody else, it's inside me and it's mine. And I'm now the only one that can ever deal with it.
And Denny, surely there's an accumulation of the choices that you've made in harmony with love and truth.
Yes, there is also a consequence of everything I've done that's waiting for me in its appropriate location. But the harder ones is all of the damage that I received, I have to deal with. Then all of the damage I've transmitted, I have to deal with. And then what's awaiting me through the whole process is after I've taken all the crust of fear and pain and suffering off, now there is the cumulative benefit of all of the consequences of how much love I've actually generated in my life. And that would be called my degree of love. I might have a higher degree of love on one topic, but I'm totally in fear on another topic. And wherever I'm in fear, I have to deal with first. Just because I've been nice in some ways, but nasty in other ways, I have to deal with the nasty. I can't say, hey, let's look at the balance scale here. Yeah. I've been nice part of the time and naughty part of the time. Naughty and nice, right? No, I have to deal with all of my fear and all of my naughty. Because I want...
when you're doing, say, a good act. Yeah.
I didn't hear you.
Even say a seemingly good act, if the motive behind it's fear, that's what you're doing.
Correct. So some people can be really nice to other people, but it's motivated by fear of criticism or fear of abandonment. And we have all kinds of addictive ways that we're nice to people, but in reality, it's actually the avoidance of unresolved fear and pain. So that's why it's, wait, I really want to know the truth about how my personality, other people may like or not like, is actually in avoidance of pain. I mean, I described for you guys once how I was in an airport in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I realized I was actually spraying fear in all directions. And I call it like going down the corridor, urinating in all directions. Because I was scanning everybody like RoboCop with intruder alert, stranger danger, just scanning everybody looking for fear. Anybody that could be an intruder. Watch that one, look at this one, don't do that one. And every time I was transmitting, I was damaging myself and them. How many times have I done that? Everywhere I go.
We all need to just go in a cave. Fear.
And even at that, I doubt that will work, because we're going to fear the rest of the world and we're transmitting it, right? So I just wanted to share with you where I am for now, because it's been a while really before I've almost not wanted to express something on the Facebook, because I'm not even really sure how to explain this in a few sentences. So that's where I am. So thanks for being willing to let me just dialogue it for a second, because I'm trusting that gradually the process will help me feel it so I can communicate it from an emotional experience rather than just a conceptual one. Questions to that, guys, before we sign off?
Prakash has disappeared.
Good luck, If we could pull back the veil and see all the damage we've ever done or participated in, it's shocking.
Yeah, I've had some, experiences of feeling, how unloving I was by being righteous, You're a racist, so,
Sure.
How that feels from the other side.
Judgment, guilt, shame, attack, religious, greed, power, politics, jealousy, manipulation, -3 boy, -4 boy, and on and on and on and on. And then the theological umbrella of how do you feel about all the spirits that are standing around you? And do you know what they're doing with you? How they're using you like a puppet and transmitting things through you like a tower. I don't like that. I don't like being used by spirits for their transmission of unloving behavior, because they're linked to someplace inside me where I haven't dealt with that particular fear. So that's a whole other topic, because I've been trying to work on the booklet for the family tree and how to communicate it.
And so with the map for glands and organs in the RAID system, we could go into what are the primary fears to work on for people to help them with the condition, or?
Sure. I think that one of the benefits of the iris will be to look at a map of what we were imprinted with under the age of 2, which is pretty much what the iris is. I mean, the arrival of the jewels usually don't form until after 2, but I think they're already there and coming. So we've actually been imprinted with a constitutional form of how we avoid fear. And if we were willing to look at our own constitution and combinations of it, and to address the fear that drives it, then it's going to change how we are transmitting and changing the function of the gland, the organ, and the body system that corresponds to it. But the majority of what we have to look at is actually in the bottom of the iris, particularly the lower medial, where it crosses over, is the opposite gender relationship pattern that controls how we relate to other people. So mother's father, father's mother, the opposite gender patterns that we receive from our parents actually is the strongest influence for how we relate to other people. All of that in the lower number 1 is related to the 1 and the 2, the lower medial, lower lateral, is going to control how we relate to people in the 3 and the 4. 1 controls self, 3 and 4 controls others. If I'm damaged in my innermost childhood, I'm going to act it out on the level of community. So the first thing for me to do is to accept the responsibility to discover the things that I'm in denial of. Which means, what am I numb to? What am I completely avoiding? If I truly want to become a more loving person, I need to become aware of those things that are causing me to do unloving things. That's how we can use the iris. That gives them back the opportunity for personal responsibility. So that's where I am, and I'd be glad to follow it up with another time. But again, thanks for the opportunity just to share it.
Yeah,
it's my personal struggle. Thanks, bud.
Some pretty deep stuff to feel. And
a lot more depth there than I'm aware of. All right.
Okay.
Be well.
All right. Bye.